You thought they'd run away, didn't you? You thought they'd escape. But the forest has other plans for Dylan, Zoe, Maya, and Lucas. The moment they tried to turn back, the forest came alive. The lamplighters weren't just performing a ritual, they were hunting. And now the group of friends would learn the terrifying truth about Blackwood Forest and the creatures that call it home. The hooded figure pointing at them felt like a death sentence. It didn't speak, but the air around them grew colder, heavier, suffocating. The group stood frozen for what felt like hours, but it was only seconds. Then, with a sharp motion, the figure lowered its hand, and the circle of hooded cultists turned toward the tree line. "They know we're here," Lucas whispered, his voice cracking. "Run!" Zoe hissed, pulling on Dylan's arm. But he wouldn't budge. His eyes were locked on the glowing red mist rising from the ground inside the circle. It twisted and churned, forming vague shapes that almost looked human, until they didn't. "Now!" Maya screamed, snapping Dylan out of his trance. The group bolted, their feet crunching against leaves and twigs as they ran back the way they came. But the forest had changed. The trees seemed closer together, the paths twisting and turning in ways that made no sense. The chanting started again, this time louder, echoing through the woods as if the forest itself was speaking. The air grew thick with an unnatural fog that clung to their skin and made it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. "We're going in circles," Maya shouted, her voice shaking. She grabbed Lucas by the arm. "This is the same tree we passed earlier, I swear." "How is that possible?" Lucas asked, panic rising in his voice. "We ran straight back. We didn't even turn." "It's the forest," Zoe said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It doesn't want us to leave." Dylan stopped and turned to face them, his chest heaving. "Okay, we need to think. There's got to be a way out. This is just not normal," Zoe finished for him. She looked over her shoulder, her eyes wide with fear. "Do you hear that?" The others fell silent, their breaths fogging in the cold air. At first, there was only the rustling of leaves in the wind. Then, faintly, the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate and getting closer. Lucas's voice trembled. "They're following us." "No," Maya said, shaking her head. "They're herding us." Before anyone could respond, the footsteps multiplied, dozens of them coming from every direction. The friends pressed together, their backs to each other as the fog thickened, swallowing the trees around them. "We need to move," Dylan said, his voice firm despite the fear in his eyes. "Stick together. Don't stop. Don't look back." They ran again, pushing through the dense fog and underbrush. Branches scratched at their arms and faces, and the chanting grew louder with every step. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, like blood. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted. Lucas was the first to cry out as his foot sank into the soft earth. "Help!" he yelled, struggling to free himself. The others turned to see him sinking into what looked like a patch of black mud, but it wasn't mud. It was alive. Tendrils of darkness wrapped around his legs, pulling him down. "Grab him!" Dylan shouted, diving forward to grab Lucas's arms. Zoe and Maya joined in, pulling with all their strength. The ground seemed to fight back, the tendrils tightening their grip, but with one final effort they yanked Lucas free. "What was that?" Lucas gasped, his voice shaking as he scrambled to his feet. His pants were torn, and dark marks wrapped around his legs like bruises. "I don't know," Maya said, her voice trembling. "But we can't stop. Keep going." The group burst into another clearing, but this one was different. In the center stood a large stone altar, its surface stained dark with something that looked too much like blood. Surrounding it were the hooded figures, their lanterns glowing with that same unnatural red light. Dylan skidded to a stop, pulling the others back into the shadows. "We have to go back," he whispered. "To what?" Zoe hissed. "More fog? More, whatever that was." Before they could decide, the chanting stopped. The leader, the one with the glowing lantern, stepped forward and placed it on the altar. The red mist swirled around it, and the growling sound from before returned, louder this time. The ground shook, and the altar cracked, splitting open to reveal a gaping void of darkness. From the void emerged a figure, tall, skeletal, with glowing red eyes and skin that seemed to ripple like smoke. It let out a bone-chilling screech that sent the friends scrambling backward. "We're not getting out of this," Lucas said, his voice barely audible over the sound of the creature's roar. "Yes, we are," Dylan said, his voice hard. "We just have to—" The creature turned toward them, its eyes locking onto their hiding spot. With a deafening roar, it lunged. The last thing they saw was the creature's massive, clawed hand reaching for them. And then, darkness. Want to find out what happens in the final chapter? Subscribe and stay tuned for part 3.